Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, widespread ecocide, destruction of our biosphere in order to have lifestyles and jobs and cars and planes, which are all very good and well. You know, all those things are really fun, but at what cost is the question. I'm going to just cover a couple of articles from Truth Out in this video. Just want to do a quick video today. I'm super, got other things going on, and I wanted to put a video out today because I did not yesterday. But I have a full day ahead of me, and I need to do it. So I'm going to start with this article from Truth Out. I'm not going to maybe read the whole thing, but as much as I can. Arctic drilling is ecocide on an incredible diversity of wildlife. What side of history do you want to be on? Indigenous Alaskan Tanya Garnett asked the Department of Interior officials seated at the dais. What legacy do you want to leave behind for your children? Garnett had journeyed from her small Gritchen community of Veneti, Alaska, to speak on behalf of her people. Our way of life is at stake, she explained. We speak for our ancestors, and we speak for our children's children. I want to see my son, my 9-year-old son, be able to get his first caribou. I want to see his sons or his daughters get theirs. Her questions and concerns echoed throughout the evening. On June 15th in Washington, D.C., the Bureau of Land Management held its final public hearing for the scoping process on the controversial issue of oil and gas leasing in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Several months earlier, Republican leaders had snuck an Arctic drilling provision into the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was approved by Congress and signed by President Trump on December 22nd, 2017. Ever since, the Trump administration has been moving aggressively to begin seismic testing on the Arctic coastal plain and to rush through the required environmental impact statement on the leasing program. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act called for an initial lease sale in the next 4 years, but the administration now claims that it would hold the first sale by next summer. Whoa. Given the scope of Arctic drilling, the critical importance of the refuge's habitat, and the region's ever-changing conditions caused by climate change, many speakers testified that a proper EIS should take years to complete, but the Trump administration intends to release its draft in the next several weeks, with the final version slated for early next year. This expedited timeline severely limits public input and prioritizes outcome over process. Okay, so I'm not going to read the rest of this article. I'm going to move on. I'm going to link this below, but you guys get the idea. And this next one is titled, How Climate Change Helped Create the Migrant Caravan. The caravan of hopeful immigrants from Central America that was tear-gassed by the U.S. government on November 25th continues to be shamelessly exploited as political fodder. Trump depicts the immigrants as a security threat to the U.S., while Democrats like Congresswoman-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez compare the Central American immigrants to Jews fleeing Germany because of the threat of physical violence and death in their own country. But both these narratives overlook one of the main contributors to the migrant caravan. The southern border has seen a sharp increase in the number of Guatemalans trying to enter the U.S. starting in 2014. That was coincidentally the first year of a severe drought tied to an extreme El Nino that struck Central America's dry corridor, which includes Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, collectively known as the Northern Triangle. El Salvador's rivers are drying up, and Guatemala's semi-arid region is expanding. Temporary relief from the drought has only come from occasional devastating flooding, which has only added to the destruction of the crops. 1/3 of all employment in Central America comes from agriculture, and that is now failing across the entire region. Guatemala is ranked as one of the top 10 of the world's nations most vulnerable to climate crisis, meaning an agricultural crisis that is now evolving into a human crisis. The current weather patterns wreaking havoc on Central American agriculture are consistent with what climate scientists have predicted, and climate models indicate it will only get worse. Those areas of the world prone to drought will see even less precipitation, like the American West, and those that see too much will get even more, with overall temperatures on the rise. An interagency study from the United Nations interviewed families trying to leave Central America. The report revealed that the driving force for this exodus was not violence per se, but the drought and its downstream consequences: lack of food, no income, and no work, all related to crop failures. Eduardo Mendez Lopez is a subsistence farmer in Guatemala and was interviewed by National Geographic. The multi-year drought completely wiped out his cornfields. His source of food is rapidly dwindling. He has no income, and he soon will have no way of feeding his children. This is the worst drought we've ever had. We've lost absolutely everything. If things don't improve, we'll be forced to migrate somewhere else. We can't go on like this, he told National Geographic. The reporter described the physical appearance of Lopez and his neighbors as gaunt and skin stretched thin over bone, after being forced to survive for months on corn tortillas and salt. It's not just subsistence farming that is being threatened by climate change in the Northern Triangle. Cash crops like coffee have been decimated by the drought, and another climate-related plague called leaf rust, a fungus that used to die with cool evenings but no longer does because of warmer nighttime temperatures. Roberto Albro, researcher at American University, says the main reason people are moving is because they don't have anything to eat. It says a strong link to climate change. We are seeing tremendous climate instability that is radically changing food security in the region. Almost half of Guatemalan children under 5 years old suffer malnutrition. In rural areas of the country, it's 90%. Wow. A World Food Program analysis found that nearly half of migrants from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala cited food insecurity as a reason for their leaving their home countries. And this is just indicative of what's happening worldwide. We have, obviously the Syrian situation really started with the drought, which put people in, left people without food and put people in food insecurity, and it exacerbated a civil war there, and blah blah blah. Everybody starts stepping in, and and it becomes about a bunch of other things. But what it really is about is climate change, and this is also happening in Africa as well, which isn't talked about a lot in the mainstream news. It isn't talked about a lot. Period. I don't hear a lot about it, but it is happening. In some of the countries in Africa, they are having the same issues, basically difficulty growing crops, people having to migrate to cities to get jobs and find food. People cannot basically grow what they used to be able to grow. And this is an ongoing situation. And, eventually this is going to take over. This is a third world problem, or a problem for other nations that actually have most of their economy living on subsistence farming or agriculture. People are just growing food to feed themselves. That's what people have done for a long time. And but when these problems, these environmental problems, start seeping into first world countries, that is when all hell is going to break loose. And lastly, I'm going to cover this article, kind of rounding out what I'm saying and what these other articles are saying. Somebody posted something about this in the comment section, and I don't know where the link went, but I just went and found the article. Potato shortage looms due to harvest from hell after unseasonable weather. This is from yesterday. Farmers across Canada left thousands of acres of potato crops unharvested after a slew of bad weather created challenging conditions, setting the stage for a possible shortage of the starchy dinner table staple. It's unprecedented. Never have I seen this in my time, said Kevin Mackelsack. I don't even know. General manager of the United Potato Growers of Canada, an organization that provides industry information to help farmers make production and marketing decisions. He's been with the organization for 7 years, and before that, grew potatoes in Prince Edward Island, where he still lives. Doesn't one of our One of our viewers lives in Prince Edward Island, right? Is that right? In typical years, one area of the country may suffer from a bad harvest while others do okay, he said. But this year, the problems span almost all the way across the country. Farmers abandoned about 16,000 acres of potato crop, according to the group's most recent estimate, which did not include figures for Saskatchewan, Ontario, or Nova Scotia, but indicated they also suffered some losses. BC is the only province that did not mention abandoned crops in UPGC's report. The group expects to have more precise figures soon. Mackelsack said it is working with the best information it has now. PEI, the country's largest potato producer, suffered the most. Farmers left about 6,800 acres unharvested. In a typical year, some 500 to 1,000 acres may be abandoned, said Greg Donald, general manager of the Prince Edward Island Potato Board, which represents the province's nearly 170 growers. The weather this year in the province was relentless. First came a lackluster growing season with a late spring and hot, dry summer, said Donald, which was followed by an early frost in September that killed any future growth potential. Then came copious amounts of rain, which delayed the end of the harvest beyond the usual Halloween target date. Farmers pushed into November. In early November, it rained one day, and the ground froze solid the next, he said, meaning farmers could no longer dig for potatoes. Many have described it as the harvest from hell. And this is, again, the problem with climate change is that it brings on weather whiplash. It brings on extremes in weather that are unseasonable, and that causes problems for animals and plants that are used to, you know, a certain weather pattern. This is something that, you know, the doubter denier friends don't quite understand. You know, when they see, anytime you just see snow or cold weather, you're like, oh, where's this warming? Where's the global warming? It's not just about global warming. The overall effect is global warming. The problem is that it creates wildly different weather regimes in many places, and it disturbs the, you know, the natural cycles, and therefore the plants don't grow, or you have crop failures, and you know, insects and birds and animals, ground animals, are all affected by this, and they end up dying as well. And you create a situation where you have habitat collapse, which nobody wants. That's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.